Hello and welcome back to Chat About It. Don't Chat About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to subscribe. Around 95% of you are not yet subscribed to this channel, so what are you doing? Make sure that you subscribe. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. I couldn't do this without you. Joy to the World hit our screens yesterday and I set about watching it for this channel. I went in with very few expectations, as I thought that me going in with high expectations may lead to severe disappointment. So I thought that would be the best way to go around it. This review does actually contain spoilers. Joy to the World was written by Stephen Moffat, and I can confirm it is Joy to the World and not Joy to the Worlds. Please remember that it is okay to like this episode and it is okay to like the Shooty Doctor. Before I get into a full review of this episode, I would just like to say that I noticed something that was slightly off with the demographic for the men in this story. I'm not going to focus too much on it, and the reason why I'm not is because it could just be a one-off, but in the main speaking cast I noticed that it was slightly off, but I'm not going to go into too much details about it here. I will see if it happens in the next series, and if it does happen in the next series I will pull it up. Joy chooses to spend her Christmas with no one after losing her mother on Christmas Day in 2020, so she checks into the Sandringham Hotel, which is coincidentally linked to the Time Hotel. There she meets the Doctor and ends up getting herself handcuffed to a suitcase that contains a starseed. It then becomes a race against time to stop the starseed exploding. This really is a true style of Moffat, crossing over of timelines, different years in one story, and the never ending of wait. I will say this, I have positives and I have negatives about this story, and I am also extremely pleased that RTD didn't write this, because I think we would have got something stupid, zany, goofy, that type of episode with forced messaging in it, a bit like what we had last year. Whilst my negatives outweigh my positives, this story was a million times better than Boom and better than what we got last Christmas. The writing was a lot stronger, and to be honest, whilst it is slightly convoluted, it was probably the best we've had from Shooty so far, but that's because he was actually given something that wasn't so airy-fairy like the previous series. This story does have messaging in it. Quite a lot of messaging actually, but it has messaging that is pretty much woven into the plot as stories should actually be. There was a lot of biblical references, however this time Moffat didn't bash religion, but he didn't glorify it either, but he put in a reminder of where Christmas is said to have begun, with very little mention to the birth of Jesus. What we see is something that I would consider more of a visual reference to the crucifixion and the star that guides the shepherds and the kings to Bethlehem. This story gets a 6 out of 10 from me, because there's a lot of things that let it down. I like the concept of the Time Hotel and the time portals to different periods. I also liked the radio implants idea for the hotel workers. The concepts are really there. I liked the idea that the episode wasn't goofy, and there is a reminder that people lose loved ones around this time and it makes it hard for them. That monologue from Joy was incredibly sad when she talks about losing her mother on Christmas Day. I have a massive down. I predicted it on the Senssphere about this being an Impossible Girl storyline, and lo and behold, it was. Joy was the key to it all, because how else would you bring joy to the world without the starseed? It's such an overturned plotline by this point. They found something that worked with Don and Noble, and they decided to keep it and regurgitate the same concept over and over again. There were also two massive plot holes with this. First one is we never see the Doctor discover the number. He just claims he remembered that password, but how would his future self have become aware of that password? Surely he would have had time to discover it by taking a long way round, a whole year, and it was only a whole year for the purpose of biblical references to end the story. The biggest plot hole was Joy's mother. Right at the end, after Joy is brought to the world and becomes the star, the story goes back to 2020, where we see Joy alive and talking to her mother on an iPad. The call ends and her mother looks up at the sky, sees the star and becomes Stardust. Yet when we see Joy in 2024 for the first time, she states her mother was dead and had not disappeared. Surely there's some type of time loop going on. Then she would have actually known that her mother had actually evaporated. And the things that the Doctor also said to Joy to get her to snap out of it were incredibly vicious, even by his standards. But I'll talk more about that a bit later on. The writing for the Doctor in this episode was still what I consider to be undoctor-like. it's true that he did sound more like the Doctor in this. He spent a year working in the Sandringham Hotel because his future self made him take the long way round. Was that for us, the viewer, to get a sense of his loneliness? I don't think that made much of an impact on me. Weirdly, I never actually got the sense that the Doctor was a lonely man. It implied that he needed a friend, that he always needed a friend, which we see in Anita, who works at the hotel. I liked Anita more than I actually liked Joy. I think she was better written. The relationship between her and the Doctor was miles better in the limited time we had with her than what we actually got with Ruby and the Doctor in an entire series. However, I would have liked to have seen her better used. She really didn't have all that much to do other than keep the Doctor company. In this time frame of the year that the Doctor spends with Anita, we don't really get to see a lot of time with him trying to solve his puzzle, something that is very akin and associated with the Doctor, and getting Anita to actually help him do it. That 10 to 15 minutes we see in the year he spends on Earth, we see the papers of his musings around him, Capaldi style, but that's about it. He could be trying to find out how his future self figured out the code for the case or something smart like that, but we just didn't get it, and I really would have liked to have seen it. We also had the Doctor saying the word honey again, although this time honey was only once and we didn't even get a babes. Thank goodness for that. However, we did get the Doctor lecture his future self because his future self was being cryptic. He said, "This is why nobody likes you. You have to be mysterious all the time. That's why everyone leaves you. That is why you are always alone." Now, you could say that this was because he was angry, he couldn't find out immediately. The only reason why I could deduce that the Doctor would be saying something like this was because he got himself split in half with this stupid bi-generation, and now he's got himself a complex about nobody liking him. I don't think it is something that the Doctor would say to himself. He's also still very careless with the companion that he is with. Joy is attached to the case. The Doctor opens the case and the case was going to disintegrate her. She's begging him to close the case, but he keeps her hanging until the last second. She closes it and he was like, yeah, it was bags of time. There is a life at stake attached to that case. The Doctor, as we know him, doesn't actually do things like that. He would find a way to make her safe before cracking it open. He would give her every opportunity to live. Then we have the scene where he says those vile things to her in order to get her to part with the case. The Doctor would have found some other way to get that case off her wrist without harming her or saying those types of things. Or if he was going to say something like that, it wouldn't have been that extreme. We could have had another scene where she spoke to him about her mother and not actually have it forced out of her. Then when they escaped the dinosaur, which by the way looked okay despite the lighting being really bad, it actually looks like Disney money has been spent in this episode. Instead of slamming the door immediately and checking on Joy, he runs back in for another look. Why would he do that? He also finds no way to save Joy at the end. He ditches her to go off and act all hero-like, but stops to read someone's letters on the Orient Express and give her advice. That's carelessness. He shouldn't have done that. That resulted in Joy absorbing the starseed and becoming the star. He didn't save her. At that point in time, she was his number one priority and he failed her. The ham and cheese toasty and pumpkin latte joke was also terrible. They need to ditch the psychic paper and they used the sonic shoe driver 7 times in 15 minutes and 20 times in total in the entire story. Please, for goodness sake, you all know what I think about it. Get rid of it. The only creative thing that I have actually seen with the Sonic in recent years is in this episode, believe it or not, when the Doctor and Trevor communicate, because Trevor's consciousness had been uploaded. Now, I promised you all that when Ncuti got better writing, I would call a good cast or a miscast. Ncuti got better writing with this story, and because of that his performance was a lot better. It was unbelievably nice to see Ncuti using his face. I would have liked to have seen more depth though to his crypticness with the argument with his future self. He did the vindictiveness towards Joy really well, but those kinds of lines are generally easier for actors to do anyway because it's easier to work out the intent and it was already elevated with the status. I think that he needs to be careful with his accent. I don't mind him using his MLE or Scottish accent, but sometimes
The diction disappears. Although I can't really talk, I'm not perfect. He cried 3 times in that story, at the 18-minute mark, the 36-minute mark, and the 49-minute mark. You can also put that down to him being a half of a Time Lord, but to be quite frank, crying is something that I never associate with the Doctor anyway, especially that much, and for that reason, it's a miscast. I don't mind actors bringing something new to the table, but it has to be something that fits really well within the realm of the Doctor's persona, and the odd tear here and there has been seen from the Doctor, but it's never to this extent, and it's never been the formation to his character, whereas it seems to be with this version, and it doesn't work. It just seems to be he cries at almost anything. And yes, you could say it's because he is half a Time Lord now, but I just can't justify it when the writing for this episode is better than the last series. It's a shame that he really couldn't discuss and study past Doctors as well. That also affects his performance. Now, that's no slight on Ncuti. He was better in this, and the plunger joke, "Is this armed?" was really well delivered. It made me laugh, and I actually believed he thought it was from a Dalek.
That's what I think. Let me know what you think. Like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Chat about it, don't shout about it. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.